that's a hill that I'll die on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, when I look at that, when I read that, to live a life worth dying for, it's, do I know what I'm living for? Because if I know what I'm living for, and that purpose is virtuous, then that's a life worth dying for.
Let's go.
Welcome to Citizen. Today we have a very special guest, dear friend of mine, David Wood, former Marine, entrepreneur, all around inspiring guy, very thoughtful, And I wanted to have you on because I've been looking to have people on that I think share the same values that I do, but who have disparate beliefs otherwise. Like, you're a deeply religious person, I'm not. But we still arrive, like if either one of us sat down and wrote down what a good person was, I think our definitions would be very close to the same. So I think, when I'm having these conversations, trying to flesh out what it's really going to mean to be a citizen, I want to make sure I'm not in a feedback loop of my own nonsense. You know what I mean? Like, I need to hear from other people about how we arrive at these solutions. So thanks for coming today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you got it, brother. Much respect. When you sent over your thoughts and kind of your 11 kind of virtues, and knowing that you and I have very different creation ideas to say, I thought of John Adams, where his quote, "Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It's wholly inadequate to the government of any other." And you have high moral standing. I mean, you and I are the same on, punishment for pedophiles, treasonous villains. I think that, a lot of times we put ourselves in these boxes where it's, okay, you're a Christian, you're a Muslim, you're an atheist, but our founding fathers were deists.
Yeah.
A lot of folks get confused saying this is a Christian nation. Were
John
Adams
was pretty clear about that too in his letter to Benghazi, or to Tripoli rather. Excuse me. The Treaty of Tripoli is pretty clear about that as well. But yeah, continue.
Well, it's just it is being a citizen, and where I'm grateful that you're doing this podcast as we kind of watch this neo-Marxist takeover attempt, where we currently are. It's been interesting to me living overseas, in a country that was a British colony that's now under the full guise of the Communist Party, Hong Kong, and then living in socialist Spain and being back here and seeing people so inebriated by the propaganda that, as you said, we're not going to give up liberty for security, and that's right where we are right now.
Yeah, for sure.
So grateful to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. And yeah, to your point from before about about our disparate beliefs, I actually have a good example of this today. We're gonna talk about Chris Pratt in a few minutes and some comments he made recently, and unpack them a little bit, because I think it's an important conversation to have. But as I said before, or what I was getting to before, is that when I have these conversations with people who are sort of alike but not totally alike, I think that's how most people are. Like, aside from some lunatics on one spectrum or the other, most people are pretty close in what they believe. Like, they articulate it differently sometimes, and they focus on specific things. But what's really interesting is when you see certain legislation, if you remove the name from it and you remove the people who wrote it, like which party is supporting it or not, you can get 75 to 80% of it. Like, is you get consensus on it. Like, people are like, yeah, that makes sense. And then you start attaching names and political parties to it, and people freak out, right? So I think it's really important to start where we agree. You know what I mean? And then work out from there, because it kind of has the benefit of, if you remember learning math in elementary and middle school or junior high, your teacher would have you show your work. And the reason isn't because they wanted you to do superfluous work for no reason. It's because they could look at you, they could look at your process and find out where the breakdown happened. And I think if we start these philosophical conversations at points where we agree and then just take it step by step, you can see exactly where your conversation partner went wrong, or maybe where you went wrong, which is even more important, right? Like it's way more important to learn that you're wrong than to prove somebody else wrong, because you don't want to be out there operating with bad information.
Right.
All right. So I want to get to this Chris Pratt thing first. Over the past 2 years, maybe, he's gotten heat on social media for being part of a church that's super anti-gay or something. I don't know. I never really looked into it because I don't really care about that shit. But it turns out that he's never even been to the place. It's called Hillsong. Yeah, he's never even been to that church. He doesn't even know anybody that goes there. He just didn't come out and say that before because he didn't want to throw the church under the bus because he had no idea what was going on there. That's what he told Men's Health. Now he still goes to, he's like a CNA guy, right? Christmas and Easter. His wife is Catholic, and I think he's Baptist or something. So they go to the church sometimes and take the kids and stuff like that. But here are his comments. I just want to read some of these. So he says, I didn't know that I would kind of become the face of religion when really I'm not even a religious person. I think there's a distinction between being religious, adhering to customs created by man, oftentimes appropriating the awe reserved for who I believe is a very real God, and using it to control people, to take money from people, to abuse children, to steal land, and to justify hatred. Whatever it is, there's evil in the heart of every single man, and it's glommed onto the back of religion and come along for the ride. So to summarize what he's saying here, it's that he's a Christian, but not supportive of organized religion in America, which is, if that sounds, and he is, if you read this entire article in Men's Health, he makes a very clear distinction between organized religion and what he considers his faith to be, which I think is an important distinction. And again, most people know this, but if you're a new listener, I'm not in any way religious. So anyways, his comments, the way he categorizes religion sounds awfully familiar. He suggests he believes in a very real God, but not in religion, which is man-made, a system of regulations that have little to do with the faith itself and have been systematically used to oppress people, take their money, abuse children, everything you know about. I said before that sounds familiar. Doesn't it sound like an American patriot, somebody that has deep faith in the ideas that this country is built upon, who's been disenfranchised and disillusioned by a corrupt government, but still has faith in what America is and what it can be? I mean, that sounds exactly like what he's saying. It's very interesting to me that there are so many parallels in the institution of organized religion and organized government. I want to hear your thoughts on that because you're a religious guy.
So it's interesting. I've had his comments sent to me by a lot of Jews and Christians who've said, look, he just bowed down to Hollywood. He's a Peter. He just denied Christ. When I hear exactly what he just said, I couldn't agree with him anymore. I'm a follower of Christ. I wouldn't call myself a religious person. I believe in Jesus Christ. I double majored at UT. I was philosophy and religious studies major. And it's very interesting. Every religion that I studied was spelled D-O, do these 5 pillars, do these 8 noble truths, live by these caste systems, but for these 4 castes.
The 5 pillars of our 5 Calvinism, 5 pillars of Calvinism, or not, what is it called? Not pillars. What is it? Shit. I don't remember. Anyways, keep going.
I'm not a Calvinist. I believe in that we're all saved by grace and we all have sinned and fallen short. And we all have the we're baptized in the blood if we bend the knee and accept the atonement and reconciliation and sanctification. But he So Hillsong is a major, huge church based out of Australia, right? I think they may be a non-denominational. They have been hiding sexual corruption forever. Like a ton of the churches that I've been to, like my church in Hong Kong Island, ECC, Hillsong had like a great freaking Coldplay style rock concert. Like you go to hear a sermon and they bring, people in that wouldn't go listen to my Presbyterian church here with a classical organ, right? Yeah. There's not hymn book, so it's a little kind of sub rock concert. If you just get on iTunes and look up Hillsong, you'll see album after album after album. Now, I think the grandfather who founded it, basically, long story short, they've done exactly what the Catholic Church has done. There's been folks that have done sexual misconduct, whether it's pedophilia or affairs or just womanizing your staff, whatever, corruption. And they slid it under the rug. It was pushed under the rug. People were kept in the church. It was hushed. Now, I don't think Hillsong has ever been one that's anti-gay. They're a very open and accepting body of Christ. Now, I'm sure they'd say you can't be a gay minister, just like you can't be an alcoholic minister or a drug addict minister. It's, or an adulterous minister. It's, there's clear definitions of deacons and elders and whatnot. But as far as being like an anti-gay, I don't think that's ever been a thing of Hillsong. Now, he's been accused of being at a church in LA that is an affiliate, kind of, a sister church or a church plant or mission partner, so to say, of Hillsong. Hillsong mega church.
So
Australia.
there's a full degree of removal from that. That's stupid. I mean, it's like the whole thing is kind of stupid, but that's particularly dumb. That's like your fucking, that's like your step cousin is a criminal. So you must be up to something like that. Come on, man.
Exactly. So he's basically getting thrown under the bus by someone who doesn't even understand the fundamentals of the original denomination that they're casting. They've seen in the media that Hillsong is going through A, B, and C for true and proper corruption. And I think his retort where he's talking about the organized religion and being Hillsong or any mega church that is not doing God's mission, that's not going out and feeding the poor, that's not helping the orphans, that's not seeing those in prison, that's not clothing the poor versus just keeping the money in the church, Joel Osteen style, and building mega churches where it's just internal and beautiful, rich gold like any, Catholic cathedral that you'll go into. I think that's worldly corruption and the man-made establishment that he's talking about. His initial statements, I completely agree with. If you're following Christ and that's your life and you're living a life worthy to die for, you have, and you're an American patriot, you have two kingdoms. You have the eternal kingdom, which is where we are going. And, who knows if that's heaven or if God's coming down here to recreate earth. Who knows? Who knows? We will know, but who knows? No one knows. And then we have our country. We have our people. We have our nation. And then we spread the greater good and we help those less fortunate everywhere. But yeah, bro, I think he's just been dragged through the mud. He's getting canceled. You've got some progressive leftist that's getting, clout with the LGBTQ community. And it's just a crucifixion. It's, right before he comes out with, starring in the Terminal List, which is another, true patriot, masculine, Jack Carr's books. I love them. I'm sure you've read them. I'm on his second one now, and I can't put them down. They're brilliant. But I mean, I think it's by no fault that this is happening right before this launches on Amazon. There's a huge, July 1st on Amazon, there's a huge backlash in the far left community over Top Gun not being, not bowing to China, for him wearing the Taiwanese patch on the Alpha Industries bomber jacket. I mean, we're in this we're in this world where, I mean, if these are the things that we're picking at people, you're anti-gay because you went to an affiliate church that was, who's like Chris Pratt's not Australian. He has nothing to do with Hillsong Church.
Yeah.
I mean, these whole linkings of this whole thing are just, it's just a witch hunt.
Yeah, it's pretty stupid. But that's, But
I like the parallels that you drew because he's saying, I follow God, the creator. I can back away from all this organized religion when it's faulty. And we're watching a faulty America right now.
Yeah. And that's,
and we're saying we believe in the truth. We believe in, in liberty, and we're patriots, we're citizens. So I love it. I think the parallels are deep.
That's the distinction I make, right? So he makes a distinction between what I assume he would call his Christianity, because that's the faith he has. He uses the word faith, but I assume that's what he means. He's been pretty open about that. And so he makes a distinction between his Christianity and organized religion or Christianity or whatever. My distinction is between, I think it's one, like people say our country is going to shit quite a bit, right? So two things on that. One is our country isn't a geographical location. It's not, 438 Congress people. It's not 100 senators. It's not a president. The country isn't even the people. The country is the idea that individual liberty and entrepreneurship are the ultimate inoculation to tyrannical bullshit. That's what this country is. It's that idea. In the same way that the idea, or all of the ideas of what, of what Christ's example on earth on how to be a good person is, I think the American doctrine, the ideology that supports this country is, I think that's a good parallel, right? Like to me,
yeah, definitely.
I wouldn't say that's my God, but it's definitely my North Star. You know what I mean? Like it just, and that's why I made this list of principles. I think it could be difficult to briefly summarize an entire belief system, but I'm trying to get there, and I want to do it in a way that makes the points, as the point of a parable is to do, as ubiquitous as possible. So they apply the same to a 13-year-old trying to figure out who they are as a person, or a 25-year-old liberal, or a 50-year-old conservative. You know what I mean? I want all those people to be able to look at this and find value and wisdom. So the first one, I had you choose a couple for us to focus on. The first one is principle 2, which is I will do something every day to help my country, my countrymen, or all men. So somebody actually asked me about that on Twitter this morning. They said, I, as a citizen, how do I get the momentum back into my daily life? Stop being reactive, waiting for something to happen. As a citizen, we start going back to being proactive and helping one another, or taking nothing for granted. Like, how do we do that? My response is principle 2, right? So you be on the lookout for people who need help. Make a habit out of taking advantage of those opportunities. Lead by example, and others will follow. And eventually we'll create a critical mass of people doing that, right? And you'll be able to see it. Like, you won't need to do a poll. You'll see the results, right? So, to me, it's about discipline and habit building. And that's the same if you're learning how to be a chef, discipline and habit building. If you're working out, discipline, habit building. You're trying to learn a language, every facet of life is discipline and habit building, even down to your personal relationships. So this should be no different, right? So tell me why you chose that one first, because that's the first one you chose. And 2, give me some examples of, because you do quite a bit of charity work, but just give me some examples from your life, and then maybe, some general ideas on how people might be able to achieve this.
Well, why I wanted to talk about this initially is because my entire life, I mean, I used to be a hardcore drug addict. I was freaking off in total left field, first getting out of the military was just out of my mind. And God has helped me put my life back together by consistency, discipline, consistent activities becoming ritual. And so when I read this and it was, I will do something every day, that is how you make change. That is how you build something into ritual. It's not putting something on the calendar and saying, okay, I'm going to do this month. I'm going to do that's not going to make any change. It's okay, let me take that back. It'll make a change in you. You'll begin to build something. But you and I train. If we said we're gonna do a freaking CrossFit box workout once a week, whatever.
Yeah.
You might as well chain smoke cigarettes the days that you're not.
Yeah.
You're not going to diet one day a week. So I believe in metaphysical alignment. We have this whole mind, body, spirit paradigm, which is absurd. I'm a straight guy full of testosterone. If my mind is leading my body, all I'm looking at are women. I mean, like that's it. That's it. I'm not, I'm out there, I'm finishing a pump, I'm traveling. It's not going to be good. I'm an animal, right? If my spirit is tail end Charlie following the body, I mean, good grief. That's the cure for Catholicism or a crisis counselor, right? You're going to be running in to repent, and you're going to need, I think we need to be metaphysically aligned. So spirit, mind, and body. And for me, that's waking up every day. And the first light that I see in my face being my scripture that I read. And this is 1 minute. This is 60 seconds, maybe 2 minutes out of my day. And it's letting that rest my spirit. It's not checking an email. It's not checking a message. It's not reacting. It's starting, it's clearing my mind, and it's starting with that every day, bar none, every day. Then it's going through emails. Then it's letting my work start, and it's my mind following my spirit. And then it's my training. It's finish my emails, get everything done that immediately gets to be done, and then do the physical. Now, I've been doing this for years and years and years, and it is ritual. So when I look at this and I say, I will do something every day to help my country, my countrymen are all men, it works. It will work because it's part of your life. It's your path and your purpose, and it's banged into daily ritual. So that's just to answer why I chose that and why that stuck out to me. It's because it's the consistency. It's every single day. You will make change if it's daily.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. And I'm not trying to compete with the Bible or any other religious text here. I mean, this is philosophy. There's no question about that. But, it is, as you say, right? Like a lot of people have actually asked to put some of these up on the reason I haven't yet to make posters out of them so people can frame them and put them in their homes to remind themselves, of this stuff. And that is an important thing. And I definitely want to be able to do that soon. But I want to make sure that the list is broad enough to apply to everybody first before we do that. But we'll do it soon. But yeah, I think it's for the non-religious person, instead of waking up and checking out that Bible verse, like about ohms or whatever, right? That you want to focus on for the day. Maybe pop a look at that one or look up and down that list and be like, what I can do today is this. And it reminds me of James Altucher. He does this thing where he makes a list of 10 items every single day. He just wakes up in the morning. He's like, all right, every day he chooses, and sometimes he's got a plan for it. Sometimes it's something he sees in the news, like 10 ways I can improve my garden or 10 books I could write or whatever, right? He just makes a list of 10 things every single day of his life. And you may not come up with your great idea when you're doing that. You may not be inspired by the words on the list. It's not the point. It's a starting point. It's like a mantra, right? You look at that, like, all right, I'm going to do this today. And your brain solves complex problems without needing you to get involved quite a bit, right? Like things pop into your head. Yeah. So you just focus on that. And then, before you know it, you're like, what I could do is that person that's been at work, that's been in a shitty mood lately, I'm going to go ask them why. And I'm not going to let them out of the room until they fucking tell me. You know what I mean? We're going to solve this problem today. Or that dude down the street that's always hungry. Or that kid at school who was always coming to school with dirty clothes. I'm going to figure out a way to get him clean clothes. You know what I mean? There's a lot of stuff that you can do every day, and you're not ever going to do it if you don't think of it first. So yeah, I think that ritual is a really important part of it. Now, you do quite a bit of charitable work, some publicly, some not. But give me from your perspective, you're a husband, father, business owner. How do you, let's say hypothetically you wake up in the morning, you're thinking about how I might be able to help somebody today. What's that look like for you?
So moving back here and moving the business back here, closing down all shop in Asia, shutting down the Hong Kong holding company, shutting down Virtus Outdoor Group Limited Hong Kong, moving everything to Tennessee was done on a whim coming back Q4. I was stuck in Vietnam 2020. I went out there to fulfill a purchase order for the Ministry of Defense in Spain. Italy shut down, Spain shut down. Wife and daughters were in Lithuania. We'd fled Hong Kong when the freaking Molotov cocktails were right underneath our flat at the Polytech. I mean, that's for another podcast. I mean, that was the beginning of the misinformation propaganda campaign. to spill over into BLM, Antifa, and everything that we saw and finally COVID. But that's for another podcast. I was stuck in Vietnam for 8 months. Had more of a free voice there than I have. I moved to Spain, socialist Spain. My Facebook's canceled permanently, taken off. That's in 2020. But when I got to Spain, we were in Marbella. We lived on the beach. I mean, beautiful, totally relaxed area. And I thought we can stay here forever. Seeing the turmoil back here, seeing the division, coming back Q4 2021, and meeting factory workers who are doing MOD, DOD contracts, all Berry compliant stuff, from fabric mills to camo printers to the cut and sew, packagers, 3PL, 4PL, my whole business that I've been doing globally, and seeing those hubs here and seeing Biden give all this work to federal prisons, just blew my mind. And, I've got family members that are on very different sides of the table than I am. And they'd often call me out and say, if you care so much about this country, move back, move back. Let's see you lose that profit margin, bring it here, practice what you preach. And I was fortunate enough through one of my Navy SEAL brothers, Mark Lonergan Hertel, awesome guy. He was a Force Recon Marine, then a Green Weenie for a bit, and then was in SEAL Team 4. And then was one of the initial kind of faces and heads in GRS. But he's 10 years senior to me. He was building and is building some very interesting IR camo, and was doing that for some of the new stealth techs, new thermal imaging, just all sorts of really cool, high speed, low drag Navy SEAL stuff, just because they always, have the funding and the connections to get the right stuff done. But he introduced me to some factories here, cut and sews. And these people are just salt of the earth. Through my father was a pastor of a Presbyterian church here. He retired. Now he was retired for 3 years. Now he's headed up to be the senior pastor of Evangelical Presbyterian Church at Annapolis. So he'll move up there in a few weeks. He's an old Vietnam corpsman. Great for him to be around a bunch of Annapolis SEALs and Marines and be back around his peeps for this last chapter of life. But his prior church, Cedar Springs, is massive in global ministries. So they were funding a lot of the work I was doing when I went over to China, based in Hong Kong, and was smuggling Bibles, smuggling funds, and building underground seminaries, working with groups battling human slavery, sex trafficking, and reaching unreached people groups. So I don't know if we'd ever had that conversation, but that's originally why I went over to Hong Kong in 2009.
Right.
Being back here and having that network of people, Save Our Families, for example, global ministry, the Koch brothers, awesome libertarian Christians that are, philanthropists that go off Frederick Douglass's quote. What is it? I will work with anyone who's going to do good, and I will not work with anyone who's going to do evil. That's the gist of it. So kind of that's their ethos. But I had the opportunity to, with a lady named Janet Cochran that works with Save Our Families, East Tennessee branch, to start moving women who've been felons or who've been rescued out of sex trafficking and or have been hardcore drug addicts and have cleaned their lives up, gotten their children back, and now need work. We've gotten to move them into our factories here and have gotten them, meaningful employment. They're able to put their families back together, and they're able to rejoin society. And most importantly, put their families back together, be mothers, be fathers, put back that critical nuclear family that's being, pushed to be stripped away from us right now. So getting to have that as my entire kind of workforce here now, a group that's hiring people like this for the cut and sew, MMI out of, Cleveland, Ohio, being a Christian group that works with vets, that's done, tech fabrics for DevGru, and kind of having this group of people, Christian or not, just by chance, all of these groups that I've worked with are Christians. Now, all different denominations. We've got Southern Baptist, we've got, non-denominational, all that. But none of them are preaching it. None of them are pushing this. They're all living what the true principles of Christ are, and that's, that goes back to what Chris Pratt saying, and that's a big problem in our country. You can feel however you want to feel about something, but the minute you're screaming and pointing your finger at the other side, you're getting labeled just as crazy as they are, and you might just be acting that way.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
we
shouldn't.
It's John 13:30 something. I don't remember what it is, but it says, it's Jesus talking. He says, by this, the people will know that you're my disciples, if you love one another.
Yeah.
Right. So like you can, if you translate it into like modern language, it would say, people will know, everything they need to know about you based on how you treat each other. Right. And that isn't unique to Christianity, right? It's not just about, or unique to religion at all. That's a very true statement for anybody, anywhere, at any time in human history. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm here, like all the stuff you're talking about, like it starts with figuring out a way to help your country and your countrymen. But there's also other elements in it, right? So, not placing virtue or commerce above virtue is one of them. Efforts toward the public good should trump your efforts toward your own good. And then putting more into your country than you take out of it, right? I mean, I think it's good that your relatives challenged you. You know what I mean? Like that's an important thing to have people in your life that'll
Call you out.
Yeah, that'll call you out, but do it in a way that's like that actually not. So there's a big difference between calling somebody out and holding somebody accountable and just being a dick. Like if you go on the internet, it's only people being dicks. They're just like, you're wrong, you're stupid, and here's why. But not you're wrong, here's why, and here's how we fix it. Like that's a much better solution to. Well, it is actually a solution because it's not a solution just to criticize somebody, and that's something that you and I definitely taught our subordinates in the military. Like, if you come to me with a problem, you better have a fucking solution to it. Otherwise, all you've done is add to the problem, right? Like,
right.
And it's, that's not entirely true. Sometimes we solve things together, but you want your people learning as early as possible how to be problem solvers, independent from the group, right? Because many hands make light work. Many minds make better solutions. So let's move on to the next one. And that's, I'll put more into the country than I take out of it. I mean, I feel like so a lot of our crowd that listens to this are people that have served in the military, currently serve, are first responders. They put in quite a bit, and it's all about perspective. So from the civilian's perspective, it looks like we've done a lot, and maybe that's true. And maybe that can be intimidating for them. Like, I'll never be able to do as much as you. It's like, that's not the point. Like, you don't have to do as much as we did. From our perspective, people that are mentally healthy know that their service is not over, right? Because that's where we find our purpose is in the service of others. So I would just keep all that in mind as we discuss these things. You guys that are listening to this, you should definitely keep that in mind. It's not a contest or a competition. You shouldn't be comparing yourself to somebody else, although you should be inspired by other people's greatness. That's definitely a thing. But, do what you can, find a way. Now, for you, post-military, how have you found ways to put more into your country than you take out of it, right?
Post-military, like I said, I was a train wreck for a good bit. Almost died of Hep C. Like again, another podcast. Like had to go on experimental chemo. Was miraculously cured, but was in a pretty dark place. And I took that job. I took 20 hours a semester and 12 hours in the summer. And luckily, because of like Damnick Intel School and other schools in the Marine Corps, your 8,000 series and everything else, every other school we did for Shrig and mapping schools and all that, they let me basically start at my 300 level classes. So, I had divorced my wife, my first wife. I had full custody of my son, got full custody of my son when I got clean, and took that job basically because I felt God had given me a new lease on life. And it was, how can I help this earth? How can I help people that are enslaved, people that are being killed for freedoms that I've had and taken for granted, And so that was why I did that work. Now, fast forward to now, coming back, it is, how can I bring work back to America? How can I put jobs how can I put food on the table for families that are hurting right now? And how can I not just do that, but help build back an infrastructure of manufacturing? Because we have the know-how. Honestly, Dan, the only thing we're missing right now is the intestinal fortitude of people to get up out of bed and work. Like, if there's been one brilliant strategy to roll us into a freaking Marxist, utopian, nipple feeding, utter attached society, it's stimulus checks. I mean, I just saw Newsom is giving a stimulus check for $1,500 to people in California. It's like, how did we get here? Why is there such inflation? It's it's called printing money. And that's about it. It's not rocket science. So, it's getting up. I think social media. I met you in Vegas at SHOT Show. I think Tank introduced the two of us, and we met there. A SHOT Show or Magic Show, or one of the trade shows. We got to have breakfast in passing, and then I started following you on social media, and you challenge people. You are very charismatic, and you're a very smart guy. You're a very well-read man. And that is a leadership role that gives people someone to emulate, and it is very helpful that you don't take a left or a right stance. It is very helpful that you stay in the middle. You're not a screaming, fundamentalist Christian or a, science go atheist that's anti that. I mean, you're very chill, and you respect everyone that deserves respect.
Right. Yeah.
And you listen. You don't lash out, you listen, and then you might lash out if it's needed, but that's good. So, I think we have to keep doing what we're doing. I was glad to be kicked off of Facebook permanently. I've definitely not lost any sleep. I mean, I love what Mike Glover says. If all your problems disappear when you put down your phone, I mean, there you go.
You don't have any real problems.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have any real problems.
If that's the case, certainly. Yeah.
So being able for, the two of us being able to inspire people and just, I mean, even through Instagram, I just try to show guys, like, take care of your family. It's cool to love your wife. It's cool to take your woman on a date night. Women, it's cool to be good to your man. It's cool to hang out with your kids. Like, this is the nuclear family. Like, at the end of the day, these are the people these are the only people that are going to be around us when we're dying. That's it. So invest in them. That's cool. It is cool to get up and work. It is cool to take care of your body. So, those with the rituals, and then how do we make this country better by being men to emulate?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And that's something that literally anybody can do. I always say the first thing that a young man, young kid, young boy learns about how to treat women is how his father treats his mother. And the first thing that a young girl ever learns about how she's to be treated by men is how her father treats her mother, right? It's a very fucking important, even if the marriage ends in divorce, the way that their father treats their mother with respect or not, whether they're talking shit behind their back all the time or not, whether they're abusive, whether they ignore their problems, whatever it is, if it's neglect, if it's abuse, it'll translate into every facet of their lives, every male relationship they ever have for the rest of their lives, and it'll translate into how young men treat women as they get older as well. But that's not just the case with parents and their children. It's the case with anybody that anybody else respects and any situation they do in life. Like, people are always watching, people that depend on you. And if you're listening to this show, you've made a choice to try to make your life and your country and the world better. So, this is a challenge to you, and I expect you to meet it. Is you do stuff every single day to help this country, help your countrymen, to help all people. You can do something every single day, whether it's holding the door for somebody or helping a little old lady across the street, or, being nice to somebody that doesn't deserve it. There's a lot of stuff you can do there. And I think at the end of the day, you should feel some sense of accomplishment, right? People sleep better when they work all day. And it's not just because they're physically tired. Like, I've been physically tired and had insomnia plenty of times. People feel better when they do the work, right? Because that's how your brain works. It expects you to do the work. And when you don't, when you're lazy, and I don't just mean about physical labor, when you're lazy in how you treat people, if you neglect people, if you put your problems above theirs, you're not going to be able to sleep at night, both literally and figuratively. You know what I mean? Now, next one that you chose, excuse me, is I'll promote equality of opportunity, not outcome, particularly when I'm in a position of power and wealth. Now, this is something that it's very easy to see how you and I might be able to do this because we've got employees, we run businesses, all this stuff. I want to hear your thoughts on how a regular person who works in a fucking cubicle somewhere, right, and doesn't own a business or whatever, or they're a truck driver or something like that, how do they do this?
I think it's having the intestinal fortitude to stand up against the mob and the narrative. It's the intestinal fortitude to speak up in those, employee huddles where someone's getting thrown under the bus or someone's being ostracized or someone is being, validated for work that they haven't done. I think that you can always voice truth and stand against, against the narrative that this is owed, this is deserved, you should feel guilt, you're a victim. We can, and not by being rude, not by being hateful, but being a strong human being, be that a man or woman, how you present yourself is everything. So, be sharp, be physically fit, be confident, study up, speak with authority, and stand up for those that are being oppressed, stand up for those who are being ostracized, stand up for those who are being thrown under the bus for being straight, for being white, for being this, for being that. And stand up for those who are being thrown under the bus for being of color or for being gay, if it's that era. I mean, stand up for anyone who's being ostracized, who's being, who is being properly, assaulted. It's everywhere. I mean, this country is so freaking huge. I forget, people used to say when people would ask me about China and they'd say, God, are there really concentration camps here? Are there really? And I'd say, everything you hear about China is true. Everything, because it's that big. You can go to Beijing, Shanghai. You don't need a VPN. You've been to, business districts in these lockdown countries where they want you in there. They want your money. They want your business. You're not going to see any of that stuff. And then you go to a second tier city, third tier city, and there's human trafficking on the streets. There's, concentration camps here. There's slave minings. There's this and that. America is not that much different. So it's being true. It's caring about your fellow man. It's loving your neighbor. It's loving all. And it's standing up for those being oppressed. Yeah. So, and that's going to be different depending on what demographic you're in and what geographical location you're in of the United States. Yeah.
I used to like to say a person should appear to be on the right when leftists are out of control and on the left when right-leaning people are out of control. What Frederick Douglass said was, I would unite with anybody to do right and with nobody to do wrong. And I think it's something that permeates through all of culture. So we're talking about business or in the workplace where people being taken advantage of, or even in the political spectrum where people might be taken advantage of. I would reduce this all the way down, like let's say you're a teenager and you see somebody getting bullied for something. Now, I talked about this on a show last week as well. And this is part of being a leader. It's part of being a man, but it's part of being a leader regardless of what your sex is. You should stop the bullying, right? Get involved, stop the bullying, and check on the victim, but spend more time with the bully than you do with the victim. And here's why. Like a toddler, if you spend too much time telling a victim they're a victim, they're going to start to believe that it's part of their identity. You know what I mean? Like your kid's fallen down and bumped his knee before, and if you just look at him and then look away, gets up, doesn't cry. If you run over and try to comfort him, starts crying because it's his human nature, right? And I'm not saying you should be manipulative with people. What I'm saying is this is how the fucking thing works. So make sure the victim's okay, but the real problem is the bully, because the bully is doing what they're doing, not because they're evil for the most part. It's not because they're evil. It's not because they're a bad person. It's because they are hurting and they want to make somebody else hurt too. That's what it is. And doesn't that sound like an opportunity to fucking help somebody? You know what I mean? Doesn't it sound like the opportunity to, because they might be in some class that people don't particularly care for anymore, or maybe they're having problems at home, or it doesn't really matter what the problem is. That dude needs your help. And, if you want to live in a country where schools aren't getting shot up, I don't want to take any blame off the people who end up doing that, because a lot of people have gone through a lot of rough shit and not decided to walk into an elementary school and kill people. But if you want to live in a world where that kind of stuff doesn't happen, you better damn well be ready to stand up, grab yourself by the nutsack, and walk over to that mean-looking dude and say, "Hey, man, what's wrong? Like, why are you doing this?" And go back to him. If he tells you to fuck off or hits you, go back to him every single day until he gives you an answer. Like, be a fucking leader. And that's the kind of example that I expect out of people, because that's what I would do. If somebody around here was acting like that, or, on a consistent basis, anybody in my life, just to ask, what's the worst thing that happen? You ask them, and what, you're gonna get in a fight in middle school? Who cares? You know what I mean? That shit happens all the time anyways. But imagine what the result might be if you stop the next person that might walk into a school and start shooting. You know what I mean? Imagine how many lives you can save just with a little bit of kindness. I think it's a really important thing to do.
Yeah, and you look someone in the eyes and ask them what is going on in their life, they're gonna give you time. Versus going over and accosting them for their actions. And if you can change a bully, that's a ripple effect, because those are birds of a feather.
Yeah,
right?
Bullies make new bullies. It's a generational thing for sure. Next is something we already talked about. I'll place virtue above commerce. I think that's one that kind of, that's one where I think a lot of people have a lot more power than they think. That sounds like something that a CEO might say, like, "Oh, we have corporate responsibility and shit like that." And yeah, that's a good thing to do. I don't like all the virtue signaling that comes along with it, because it takes credit for solving problems that you don't even bother trying to solve, which is kind of fucked up. You know what I mean? But even at the lower level, like, you work at a company that's doing shady shit, find a new job, right? Like, why support them? And believe me, especially considering the wage stagflation, if you want to call it that, or the how wages relative to output and revenue have gone down a lot over the last 25 years. You are 100% doing that company a favor by staying there, right? Not only are you doing them a favor, you're doing all of America a disservice by continuing to prop up the machine that's preying on our communities. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that. There's literally something that everybody can do here. But I want to hear your thoughts. Obviously, you were trying to do some good stuff over in Hong Kong, and I like Hong Kong, but man, it's probably a little bit too late for them now, just because we've not done a good job of handling that situation here. But I'm not sure that there's really anything America could have done. This isn't a political show. That's not the point. I want to hear now, from your perspective, forget about all the business stuff. How does the individual, like the average non-business owner, do that? How do they place virtue above commerce?
Well, reading these every morning would be a good start, because if you're not centered, if you don't have your path, if we don't know our path and our purpose, we're just, it's mind, body, spirit, right? It's so many of my buddies that were pharmaceutical reps. Now they're making a ton of medical sales, and it's just going, it's just going from one chase of the dollar to another, and not even taking time for self-care. And if we know our path and our purpose, if we, I named my company Virtus because Virtus is Latin for warrior virtues, and it's if we care, if we stand against a sick culture and a broken society, we put, as a as a follower of Christ, I mean, I love Paul the Apostle, the full armor of God. I mean, it would be him nowadays telling us, the kit you put on with 82nd Airborne, what I put on when I was with Shrig. He gives the breastplate of righteousness, the belt of truth, stand firm, and the shoes, the gospel of peace, the helmet of salvation, the shield of faith, and the sword of the Spirit. And so it's, what do you want to do? What brings you fulfillment? What's your gift? And not getting too, melodramatic into the touchy feely, like what is your passion? And, how what filter do you use on TikTok? But what gives you meaning, and how can you help your fellow man? And if you don't know what you find your identity in, you're sunk. I mean, you're sunk. If you can't look yourself in the eyes and say, I stand against pedophiles because I stand against slavery because I stand against abuse because, then you're Christian Bale and American Psycho. Like you're a sociopath or a psychopath. If we define our path and our purpose, we're going to understand how precious our time is here. I mean, you and I are what, in our early 40s? I think we're close to the same age. Yep. I'm a 79er. Like I have a friend die every couple months, and it's just a normal thing now. It's not suicide or a car wreck. It's like, cancer, this. Yeah. I just had one of my shareholders die of brain cancer. I mean, he had a freaking tumor. This dude was a triathlete, cleanest eater I know. I mean, it happens. Yeah. That's life. And it's, what did he do with his time? This stuff happens, and you think, you see the kids. God, I wish I spent more time with my dad, or, oh, my dad was always with me. This was great. And, and then you're gone, and nobody cares. Nobody cares. Did you make it to the funeral? No, I couldn't. I was like, okay, well, back to business. So it's, do you care about your legacy? What's your path and your purpose? Define your path and your purpose, and then live, work in a job that aligns with your virtues. And I think if you work in a job that is on the trajectory to your Talos, to your Acme, to your Summit, and you put that over commerce, you're living happily, you're fulfilled, you're on that trajectory, you're living with your path and your purpose, and you're going to be working with people that are aligned in the same values. And, that is mission critical, is iron sharpens iron. Show me your friends and I'll show you your future.
Yeah, that's what's meant when people, by the way, when people say money can't buy happiness, it's not to say that money can't dramatically improve your life. That is, obviously that's true. Come on, man. Like that's not the point. The point is that money can make a good life better, but it can't make a bad life good. You know what I mean? Now it can drag you out of poverty, but I mean, look at how many rich people kill themselves. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. So to your other point, I agree with that. What's your gift? So I've talked a little bit about this before, but it's a really important one, because we seem to see traits as either intrinsically good or evil, right? Like aggressiveness is bad, anger might be bad, while some other, like compassion and empathy, might be good. Now, compassion and empathy could 100% be taken advantage of. You could be an enabler and completely fuck up somebody's life that you're in charge of. If you're an enabler as a parent to a young kid that has, particular demons, that kid's not going to turn out well. That is a very real thing. And obviously there's benefits to aggression, right? I mean, it's biological. There's a reason for it, to protect your kids, to protect your family, to respond to disasters and things like that. So what I would recommend is find not what you're passionate about, but what you're really good at, or so what your instinct is, maybe even might be a better way to put that, because if your instinct is to get hot and react quickly, there's a really good use for that, right? You need to learn how to control it. Obviously, you can be a really good jumper, but that doesn't mean you're going to be a great basketball player. So you got to learn skills. So develop that ability into something good. You know what I mean? You're going to be the best you'll ever be if you take the things that you do naturally and become really good at doing those things. That sounds like a platitude, but this is very obvious to me. You know what I mean? A guy with no arms isn't going to be a baseball player, probably, but maybe soccer. Who knows? So here's the last one. This is, I will live a life worth dying for. What's that mean to you?
Well, death is inevitable, and we're one day closer to it every day that we wake up. To me, living a life worth dying for is would I die at any moment for my fellow man, and am I living a life not so much of legacy, but to where I'm changing lives around me. I mean, when I start to get angry and I start to get divisive and I start to, when I know it's time to just put down my phone and freaking turn it off and turn off the news and just walk away from everything, is when I let the demons set in that make me begin to hate my fellow man. And I was a bad guy. I mean, I was a bad dude when I got back from Afghanistan, when I got out of the Marines, and I was with my team, and like we were dangerous. We were not in a good place. And it's very easy the minute that you are on the top of the summit and you've made it to your temporary telos to forget about the people that helped you make it there and the pitfalls that you went through. And at the end of the day, the only thing we have is each other. I mean, that's it. Our fellow man. The only thing we can take to the next life with us is each other. It's souls. And whether you believe in that or not, you definitely believe that we help each other get to success, whatever that success is. Whether it's whatever it is, we help people get on the trajectory to their telos or to the telos. And if that is something that is going to have you killed, I mean, the flip side of that, if that's something that goes against every totalitarian around you, then you damn well better live that if you're living for validity and you're authentic. I mean, you look at the Bible and you look at these heroes, David, freaking Solomon, Samson, all of them messed up, dude.
Deeply flawed. Yeah.
Deeply flawed. I mean, and even when they had been blessed and were at the top just fell and fell and fell. I mean, I read Proverbs and I'm like, is Solomon, was he even saved? Like, this dude went off the absolute deep end at the end. Like, I mean, good grief. Like, the irony of someone not being able to live out their own Proverbs. Yeah. Right. Their own knowledge. I mean, David withering at the end, and it's just, it's over and over and over. And it's, these are kings. These are kings. So how are we living, and are we living daily for something that truly matters? And I mean, again, that goes to path and purpose. What are we living for? And if you are living out what you are supposed to be doing, and that is helping others. I mean, honestly, when I was going in and out of China, I was ready to die. I mean, if it was captured, I was right with God. That to me was worth it. Now, fighting against a corrupt group that is dabbling and responsible for sex trafficking, for moving. I mean, and I don't want to say too much on that here, but I think you know what I'm getting at. Yeah. I mean, that is something that's a hill that I'll die on. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, when I look at that, when I read that, to live a life worth dying for, it's, do I know what I'm living for? Because if I know what I'm living for, and that purpose is virtuous, then that's a life worth dying for.
That's a good addition. Nobody said that one yet. So we've heard, live a life worth dying for because people have died to make your life possible, right? That's part of the American fabric. It's part of a lot of countries' fabric, but I think particularly ours, because our revolution happened so recently, historically speaking. And then I've heard, if you're on your deathbed, you don't want to have regrets, right? So imagine what you're doing right now and think, if I was on my deathbed, would I look back on this moment and be pleased with it? And now you've added this other one, like, are the principles I've chosen to follow worth dying for? I think that's an important one. Oh boy, hold on, I got to write that down so I don't forget it. Although we are recording this, I guess I could just go back and listen. But yeah, I think that's a really good point. One that I hadn't really considered before. Not in the context of this question anyways. I mean, obviously we put our lives on the line quite a bit, but you know, at the time you don't really think about it that much. You just like, this is what's got to get done, so you do it. But that's good advice. Well, cool, man. We've made it through all this stuff today. I appreciate you coming today. Appreciate your time. Hopefully we can have you in the studio here sometime soon when you're in Texas. Tell everybody where they can find you so they can check out your stuff, all your businesses and whatnot.
Instagram, Vogue Global, David J _Wood, and Vogue Store, Vogue, VOG, VogueStore.com.
Cool. Thanks for coming today. Thanks to all of you for listening. This has been Citizen.